Lance.
Yeah, I'm here.
Good. Hey, how you doing, brother?
Good. Are we on the air?
Yes, we are. We just came back. We're live.
Cool.
We're hanging out, dude.
Can I actually start this out? I just want to say something real quick. Lance, I was prepping for the show before the show, and I listened to like 5 minutes of your latest podcast, Love and Suicide, and dude, you got me hooked. Like I'm actually mad that I listened to it before the show and not like a couple days ago, because I could just sit there and listen to you for like hours, and I plan on going back and listen to your stuff because you're just the way you deliver just really drew me in, and you just like even just you talking about all the noises that are happening, and you're like, and now I'm rubbing my beard, and you're getting all real into it, and I'm just like, I can't shut this off. Because I feel like that I would be like leaving a conversation, like if you were right in front of me just talking to me. If I just shut it off, I feel like I just cut you off mid-conversation.
Well, that's a great compliment. Was that the only chance you hear anything? Or did you hear to those other ones I sent you?
I hadn't listened to much. I listened to a little bit this morning, but Slim was before the show checking.
Yeah,
who did I deal with on Twitter? I wasn't sure who I was talking to.
That's me. That's Rob.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't get much check much out either today. I was all over the place.
To be perfectly honest, I just got a quick chance to check out what you guys were doing a little bit from some of your YouTube clips. But I saw something where the little kid William was talking to the lady trucker gal.
Yeah.
And
that was my son's.
That's your son? Okay.
Yeah, they were up for the summer.
And then you were talking to some rapper guy, Gray something. I saw a little of that. And Grayish, I think his name is.
Yes.
So I have a little bit of a reality on what you guys are doing too. So, but how did you guys find me in the first place?
Twitter just. Yeah. I think you followed us, or I followed you guys. I think I was going on a follow spree. That's what I do. I go through like friends of mine.
Well, me too. I follow. If somebody's a podcaster, I typically follow them just because I figured it's sort of a weird little subculture.
Yeah.
And it's something I've been a part of for a long time. I've actually been podcasting for over 10 years now, so I've really seen the highs and lows of it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You're like a pioneer, man. I didn't realize that. Slim saw that earlier. It was like 2005 that you started, right?
Yeah. I first heard about podcasting from a buddy of mine who really is a true pioneer of podcasting, a guy named Dan Class, who does a podcast called The Bitterest Pill. And he told me about it, and this would have been maybe October of 2004. So podcasting was really just starting.
Yeah.
And he was telling me about this thing, and he was thinking about going back out. He was a stand-up comedian, and he knew I was a storyteller, and he had directed some of my stuff. And he was telling me, he said, hey, there's this new thing where you can put something out on the internet, and maybe, and this is what the numbers he was talking about at the time. Obviously it was very beginning. He said, maybe 50 people would be listening, and it's better than going out to do some performance somewhere where you do it in front of 50 people and then it goes up in the ether, and I was like, this sounds pretty cool. I didn't even have a computer at the time. I was totally broke. I was living in like some basement in this buddy's house, and so I couldn't get started until when I did, which was March of 2005. But yeah, I've definitely been around and seen the whole arc of the whole thing.
How different was it back then, like equipment wise?
I think a lot different because it wasn't that as many people doing it, so you knew most of the people doing it, and not knew them, in a real sense, but you kind of knew who they were. You would either heard a little bit of their podcast, or you knew them through somebody else talking about their podcast on their podcast, and I mean there was still a few thousand podcasts, let's say. I don't know what the number was, but it was still relatively small, you know what I mean, in general terms. And it was kind of exciting because it was the Wild West. I mean, I was doing it before iTunes had gotten involved, right? So it was in fact, me and a handful of other people, when I say handful, maybe 100 or a couple hundred other people, we got listed on iTunes when they first launched their podcasting thing. Just automatically, we got listed because we were just on the podcasting radar. Wow. Yeah, it was just a very different thing, and it was really, we were all just kind of trying to make up the rules as we went along. And one of the things that I kind of was, you hate to use the term first because, when you say you're the first doing something, then somebody will come along. Well, no, wait, I did it first. but I typically use the term one of the first. Okay, so I was one of the first people to do the thing where I would actually post a new image each time I posted a new podcast, because at the time, the school of thought was like you always had to go with your logo. You always had to promote your logo, and so every time people would post a new podcast, they would just use whatever logo thing was their image. And I thought, well, it'd be more interesting. Well, actually, I had a friend. Well, it wasn't even a friend. He was a listener. This guy in the UK who said, "Hey, what if we created a new image for each time you do a podcast?" And I said, that's a great idea. So I started doing that, and at the time, I was one of the first people doing that. So I kind of have those kind of roots with the thing. And then the other thing that's kind of cool is I started the group called the LA Podcasters back in, it would have been like April of 2005, and that was a bunch of podcasters. In fact, when I was watching your guys' thing today, I was thinking of some of the guys that were. There's a podcast that used to exist called Tres Jefes. These three guys that were from this area called Southgate here in Los Angeles. Kind of when you hear like they say South LA, that's kind of that area, not far from Compton. And they had this kind of crazy, three guys getting drunk, talking kind of podcast, and that kind of remind me a little bit of what you guys are doing. Although they weren't live, they would record it and then put it out. But they were part of it. Like I said, I got Dan Class, this other guy Kush, who did these really cool stories. Another guy, this guy Tim, who did this thing called the Hollywood Podcast. Another guy, this guy Grant, who did this thing called the Radio Adventures of Dr. Floyd. It was like some really cool people doing stuff in LA, and so we kind of started this little collective of people, and for maybe 2 years or so, we were kind of on the cutting edge of things,
That's cool.
So that was pretty cool.
Wow, dude, that's awesome. I think it's amazing that you're a leathersmith. I just think that's so cool, dude.
Yeah, well, everything I was doing up until then, started that about 5 years ago, was not working, including the writing and everything else. It was just nothing was really making enough money. There was a point in those early days of podcasting we really thought, okay, this is going to really turn into a gig. This is really going to turn into a job, because we could see that podcasting was going to be the new trend. Of course, nobody knew how to translate it into money, and they're still trying to figure that out, most people. But at the time, it seemed like maybe that was going to work, and the LA Podcaster thing, I thought I could turn something like that into whatever.
I would have thought.
None of that worked. So we were looking around, and we were going to start a T-shirt business. We were just kind of looking for something else to do, to make some money. And my girlfriend Marisol, she said, well, one of the things that we could do that doesn't cost that much money to do is make leather goods. And at first I was like, I don't know about that. It's like I really wasn't into it. Yeah. But we tried it out. We bought some materials. We tried it out, and we made a few belts, or a handful of belts, maybe 10, 15 belts, and we went to this little local farmer's market, and people flipped out over them. And we were making them in our garage, and it was just like, this is kind of working. This is making money. This is working. So we just kind of translated into a little business. I mean, it's still a small business. It's an upstart, but it's got a vibe, and thanks for bringing it up.
No problem, dude. And do you make a lot of money off the podcast?
No, none really. I make next to no money. I mean, there was a point where I thought I was going to.
Yeah, I would have
but my podcast is kind of it's very different than most podcasts, and it's not really marketable in a normal sense, and it's almost kind of artsy a little bit, and so it's just not really. It's not what advertisers would be interested in, and frankly, I don't think that advertising on my podcast would really work. Certainly, if you guys trip out more on what I'm doing, I think you'll probably see that too. I also like the freedom to just kind of be able to do my thing the way I want to do it. Yeah. So at this point, there's a certain freedom of not having to chase down advertisers, not have to worry about that stuff, and just do my thing to do it, and not worry about that part of it. Though I was chasing after that stuff for a while, in the early days,
It's cool too not to have to answer to anybody.
That's one nice thing, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of disadvantages. There's a lot of disadvantage when there's not that sort of financial reward or just like for instance, I don't have that many listeners in part because I do kind of a weird show.
I was going to ask that.
What's that?
I was going to ask that if you had a big listening.
No,
audience.
I don't. For a little bit, there was a little period of time from about maybe late spring of 2005 till about maybe early spring of 2006, where I was sort of internet famous, and my little line is, had 14 minutes of internet fame. You know what I mean? It was like just not quite famous, but almost famous kind of thing, and
wow.
I did some cool stuff, like I did this thing where I was the first speaker to talk about podcasting at Cambridge University in the UK, which is one of the oldest universities in the world. So there was like all these kind of opportunities that sort of came my way during that time. And during that time, for just a brief period of time, I did have a pretty decent audience. But I kind of got into this idea that there was at the time, and still even now, there was this thing where everybody's trying to figure out how do you incorporate music into your podcast, and the PodSafe music and this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? There was all that stuff going on, and I had thought, I got this brilliant idea that I would just kind of like sing. I would, like, if I had some music that I wanted to do, I would just kind of a cappella sing it, and people just hated it. I mean, they hated it. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, they hated it.
I think that's cool.
I think it wasn't great singing. You know what I mean?
It's cool.
and you know what I mean? It just wasn't great singing. But
we could start a barbershop quartet here.
I'm sorry. What's that?
No, I was just making a joke. We could start a barbershop quartet.
Yeah.
Rob and Slim both said that they thought that was cool. They're going to start doing it.
Yeah.
Like, why don't we take another step?
Well, be careful. I think part of the thing was, going back to the UK, a lot of my audience was in England and at the time, and I think part of it is they're very picky, and they're picky about the quality of somebody's voice, I think, or something, and they just completely rejected it. And and then I was so pissed off that everybody was giving me shit, I kept on doing it anyway, and you know what I mean. But you know what it was? What it really was is, and I think if you listen to my podcast, you'll pick up on this. And I do sing every once in a while. Last couple podcasts, not this last one I did, but one before I did a little singing. But part of it is it's a way to express my emotions in a way that I can't, with just words. You know what I mean? So, because most of them are kind of like I like to sing like country ballads or some kind of sad songs, or you know what I mean, poignant songs, or those kinds of things, and it's a way to express myself emotionally through the music, through the song, that I can't do necessarily with just words or whatever. So but it definitely has hindered me. There's no doubt about that.
Our intern Pete likes to sing. He sang a couple months ago on the show, and it's on the YouTube. It's called Pete's 40 Ounces Up.
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's his
And
punk
what-
song.
what was the feedback?
I used to be in a couple of metal bands, back when I was younger. So
We got a couple of people liked it, and a couple of our rapper friends are going to use it. Our one buddy, soysaucesound.com, he's already cut it to where it's going to be the chorus of a song. He's going to get around to it eventually.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you never know. I mean, it sounds like he's maybe a better singer than I am, and so that helps. Or it sounds like maybe it's kind of a little bit of a kind of a novelty kind of piece.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that can kind of translate better. You know what I mean? Where, in a way, I was being serious when I was singing. So I was being sincere, and when somebody's singing in that way and it's not good singing, let's say, that I think people can kind of bad trip on it, in the way that, they knock people off American Idol or any of those kind of goofy shows. But not that that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to do something else. And I think if you guys actually get a chance to hear my podcast, I think you'll get a better sense of how I was using the singing, because it was more, like I say, to kind of get across an emotion.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So
I didn't see. Can you download them? Because I plan on like downloading like 5 or 6 of your podcasts tomorrow while I'm cleaning my house and listening to my headphones.
The most recent 20 should be on iTunes or so.
Okay, cool.
So awesome. I think so, and then you know, I usually have like a link to the audio, and you know, you can, I think, what if you right click? I don't know what your situation is, and download that way. And I don't actually have the thing where you can just click it and it just automatically downloads, but it plays in your browser or whatever.
That's what I saw. I did check a couple things out. Yeah.
Are they all like 20 minutes, 25 minutes?
That kind of seems to be a sweet spot for me when I do my so-called longer pieces, but I you know, some of them are short, some of them are 10 minutes, some of them usually not much shorter than that, but some are, and I've done stuff that are 45 minutes too. You know, I did this one, my 10th anniversary piece, which is actually pretty cool. I actually recommend that one. By the way, we haven't said the name of my show, so you might just throw it out there. Verge to the Fringe, okay? So if people want to check it out. But for my 10th anniversary show, I connected with, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this band called X. They're a real popular punk rock band from Los Angeles.
I know who they are.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
I know.
Yeah. They're probably, you know, like, they're kind of famous for a couple goofy things, like
they do that
you know,
song,
in Major League,
you
know. But you know, like in that movie Major League, the song "Wild Thing" or whatever, that's their version of that song. They did the song "Breathless" for this movie that's kind of a little bit famous. But they have really cool stuff, and it's kind of a little bit country-influenced punk rock music out of Los Angeles. They're one of the real pioneers of that LA scene from the late '70s.
I actually saw an old documentary with those guys in it. And,
A Decline of the Western Civilization.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
So they're the real thing. And anyway, so I connected with the drummer, this guy DJ Bonebreak, connected actually through Facebook, and he ended up. I hired him to create some music for my podcast. So in that one, you hear him playing the drums, you know, different drum pieces, whether you use vibes and different kind of marimba and different things to create this kind of atmosphere. Has almost kind of a little bit of a Twin Peaks, Twilight Zone kind of feel to it, which is actually really cool. Nice. So I plan to use more of his music in future ones. But for right now, I like to sometimes just, you know, I record something, I just want to get it up there. I don't even want to edit it. I usually just put up the raw audio. I don't edit it at all generally.
That's great.
And so I just kind of go with it and just throw it up there, you know. Cool. But there's one thing that I think you guys could be interested in that I did. There was a point in 2009 when I kind of thought, man, this thing isn't working. The freaking podcasting sucks. Blah blah blah. Everybody was kind of even not hip on the name anymore. Podcasting, that was kind of going down the tubes a little bit at the time.
Wow.
And so I kind of thought I was going to quit, you know. And I was like, fuck this or whatever. So I did for like a couple months.
Yeah.
And then something happened. I don't want to go into all the details, but nonetheless, something kind of inspired me. Like somebody seemed to jack this old little story I had. A couple people seemed to jack it for their own little project, and I was like, how do I get back? How do I get back? And I was like, okay, well, I'll do my podcast and I'll talk about it, whatever. So I did, and it kind of got me back into it. But then I thought, well, how could I do this thing? How could I do podcasting? So how can I distill it down into the bare essence? Just really just break it down. So I decided I was going to do this thing where I was going to pretend as I was leaving these voicemail messages for this guy that I just ended up calling the dude. So literally, it's like for about 3 years, all I did was like I would record into my phone, and I would just leave about 10-minute long, weird, seemingly voice messages for this guy, that you don't really know who he is, and it was pretty experimental. It was pretty different than what anybody else was doing, you know. And I do it occasionally, but I don't do that much anymore. But I thought that you guys, if you go back, you know, like 2010, if you go back into my archives, some of that stuff might be interesting.
That's cool.
I wanted to know how you go about prepping for your show. Like, is it scripted, or do you kind of ad-lib it?
It's mostly ad-libbed. I used to do more of an outline where I would do like a bullet point outline of how I want to do it. I like for the last, really almost since not every time, but most of the time since that time where I started doing the thing with the Verge of the Dude phone call thing, I just would go I would think about it. Like during the day, I would think about what I was going to talk about. I would kind of have an idea what I was going to say, but I would just go and I just do it and just not even really think too hard about it and just let it come out and try to be in the moment, And I think at my best, I'm really in the moment and creating while I'm speaking. So, sometimes it really works. Sometimes it fails miserably, but sometimes it really does work.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, how long did you do stand-up for?
I just did stand up for about a year. That was like 1988 till about 89, and if you heard that first part, you probably heard me say that I felt handcuffed by stand up because I didn't really feel like I could really do the things that I wanted to do or say the things I wanted to say, because my style is much more, although sometimes humorous and oftentimes humorous, it's more generally serious and what have you, and I feel like I could just, as a storyteller, just do whatever I need to do, and I don't have to go for a laugh, which is great. I mean, getting a laugh is awesome. You guys have a little bit of a stand-up background? Is that what you guys, I know you have stand-ups on your show.
I was a real big fan of them, and I lean more towards comedy,
Right.
Dabbled in it, in the past a little bit, but yeah.
This for me was kind of like a spur of the moment type of thing. I found out Rob used to be in radio, and I've always for years have tried to start these projects with people, always just something different, and nothing ever worked out. And I was like, well, you like radio. I've always been interested in that. Let's give it a try. And we've been doing it for like 2 years now. But
yeah.
Wow. And how's your audience doing? How's it coming along?
It's growing. Definitely growing. YouTube is about the same, but we were off for the summer, so I haven't really been active on there. We haven't been as active on YouTube, but Twitter has been growing, especially I was just thinking to myself earlier, I wasn't doing nothing really all summer, but in the past couple weeks, and within 2 days, I booked like a month of interviews and all that. Like, we're definitely getting bigger guests, better guests,
Awesome.
I think it's growing.
If you can have that momentum where you're like right now, mine is more plateaued, and it's been plateaued for a really long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have spikes, where it goes up, but if you can find that way to have that momentum where at least it's pushing upwards, that's enough to keep you going. You know what I mean? That's enough to keep you going. So hopefully you guys can maintain that and have success. I've always thought that it would be fun to do something like what you guys are doing, which is, kind of a live thing. But it kind of, like I say, if you listen to my show, my style is just different. You know what I mean? It's not really, it would maybe work for that, but I don't know.
Well, shit, Lance, we got to start wrapping it up, dude. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'd talk to you more, but tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at vergeofthefringe.com. That's where the podcast is. One Lance Anderson on Twitter. Not on Instagram, unfortunately.
No, neither are we.
And Facebook, you can track me down on Facebook. If you go to thevergeofthefringe.com, you can find other ways to find me.
Cool. Thank you so much for talking to us, brother.
All right, thank you. Thanks for finding me.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a good night, dude.
Take care, man.
Okay, you guys too. Bye-bye.